All right. Thank you for joining us today. This will be a new segment starting today. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to talk about things that interest me, and we'll title this playlist "Lectures with Luke." So as we start the lecture, we're going to make our way towards this applied energistic meteorite. And as we make our way there, we'll talk a little bit about what my plans are for this series and take it from there. So, what are the plans? Well, the plans are to have fun and to talk about things that I find interesting. I find a lot of things interesting, so it might be a long series, and I could get bored and it could be absolutely nothing. But look at how gorgeous this is. Excuse me. Um, we are playing on an amplified world, so terrain generation is gorgeous. Traversal is a nightmare, absolute nightmare. So we'll see how we get through this. So the first lecture that we're going to talk about I don't even know if lecture is the right word. Maybe like a podcast, but everyone says everyone and their mother has a podcast nowadays. So nah, it's going to be a lecture. That's what we're going to call it. What we're going to stick with. So let's see if we can get up here. Good gravy. This is a pain. Amplified worlds are beautiful, but good gravy, are they a pain trying to traverse? Oh, whew. All right. So, what are we going to talk about first? Well, I think a great thing to talk about, and something that the United States has done a horrible job really having any kind of good discussions over, is energy and energy production and the policies surrounding energy production. Um, because there's a lot of talk about going green and all the different ramifications of green, but most of those conversations are not done by politicians. And so it's unfortunate that we haven't had any good talks on energy. At least in my opinion, I don't think we've had any good talks. And so let's talk about it a little bit. So when you're talking about energy and the energy sector, and creating energy and generating energy, um, one of the things people like to talk about is going green. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. Now, when you have such a big topic, I think it's important to focus on something that you can manage without, it being, 20 episodes long. So to do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about a Bible verse, actually. If you got your Bible with me, turn to Proverbs 14, verse 4, and this will be the kind of the foundation that we talk about. I'll try to quote it from memory, so we'll see how this goes. Where no oxen are, excuse me, just got over a little bit of COVID and influenza A, which is an absolute pain in the lungs. So I apologize if I sound sick. It's because I am. Um, but back to the Bible verse. Where no oxen are, oh yeah, look at that. Where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but much increase is by the strength of the ox. Let's see, did I quote that right? Oh yeah, yeah, I did. So what does that mean? Well, if you think about it, now that's a verse that's certainly very easy to just go over in your daily Bible reading. But what does it mean? Where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but much increase is by the strength of the ox. So obviously, I was talking about a crib, a stall where you keep the oxen. And if you're familiar with um, cows, horses, equines, they produce a ton of poop, something like between 30 and 50 pounds of poop daily, which is a lot. Which, if you're cleaning that up, that's a mess. You know, uh, You have to clean 1 pound of poop up. That's a mess. Much less 50 a day. That's a full job. That's a lot of work you got to do. But the thing is, you don't get much increase based on your strength. Does that make sense? You get much increase when you rely on something stronger than yourself. Now, we're not going to make this some metaphysical conversation. We're talking about real things here. An ox is a lot stronger than you. And in the modern era, we have things a lot stronger than oxen. And so when you think about much increase is by the strength of the ox. So what Solomon is getting at is if you want not just increase, but if you want to much increase, you have to rely on something or someone else's strength. In ye old days, you relied on an oxen. You had a team of oxen, and that's how you plowed. So I apologize for the snorting. Should be the last of it. You want to talk about oxen, not hear about them. So you relied on the strength of the oxen if you wanted much increase. And everyone wants increase. No one wants to be more poor. No one wants their children to be poorer than they were. That's just common sense. Um, Politicians, they're no different. You'll read in the newspaper sometimes. You'll read, how my daily commute is hurting the environment, and it'll be said by a politician who is quite literally flying a private jet just to get to a climate change summit, which is just absolute hypocrisy if I've ever seen hypocrisy. And it's just absolutely nuts, that me feeding my family is somehow bad for the environment, but you being able to fly to an event in a plane just for you and your team, that's outrageous. If I'm hurting the environment, you are raping it. That's what I mean, what else would you going to say? I mean, it's nuts. It's just the utter hypocrisy. And normal people, they look at that and they see right through it. It takes a college education for someone to go, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. My commute is bad for the environment." Well, keeping my family fed is 100 times more important to me than the environment, as it should be. People first, and then animals and plants second and third. And I think people really have stepped away from that. And when you don't put people first, it really shows in the problems that are generated from it. I don't know where the center of this meteorite is, but this has taken forever. Holy cow. Sheesh. But, anyways, families are a lot more important than the environment. Now, that being said, of course, we don't want natural catastrophes. But if it comes down to keeping my family fed versus having a long commute where I produce lots of carbon dioxide through there we go, through my commute, so be it. And one of the problems that politicians are having, especially the more left ones, especially the more radically left ones, is that no one's having any public discussions of how much filth we are willing to allow in our society. A lot of these politicians, it's like they want this immaculate, perfect world, but it's not really achievable. You can't have this absolutely immaculate, perfect, perfectly clean society without someone else being willing to get dirty, and it shows. It shows on. Let me just turn this on to help me out. There we go. All right. Do we have a good? No, we need. I don't know if those are big enough. I think that'll work. That should work. Excuse me. So let's see. Got all four of those. Let's see. We able to teleport back home. Let's see. No. Well, dang. I'll kill you. You know, I will kill you. So, when it comes to energy, people want their families to be fed and to stay fed. And they want to be able to go home. They want to turn the lights on when they want. They want to be able to afford turning the lights on. Not only afford it, they want it to be cheaper than what it is. The cheaper it is, the easier it is on the poor, and the more that we can do with our money. And the fact is, when politicians, politicians are making 180,000 a year if they're a senator in the United States of America, if my memory is correct. Which that's not poor, and yet somehow these people making $180,000 a year on salary have net values that are in the hundreds of millions. And I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat or an alien. I mean that's wrong and that's messed up. So the idea that this very corrupt individual is going to lecture me about sustainability while you're unsustainably sucking the wealth out of the public you're supposed to serve, which that's what you are if you're a senator, you're a congressman, you're a servant. And that's what a lot of people in authority forget, that the higher you are in a power, the more you are supposed to serve. It's saying you're the boss kind of a thing. I've been given a lot of trust. Oh, shoot, man, that thing just came out of nowhere. I've been given a lot of trust, and if I break that trust, I hurt myself because there's all. I mean, you shouldn't be evil, but I also hurt the public's trust in the entire system. Gosh, dang, there's a lot of bad guys. How did he stay on there so long? Is what I want to know. And when you hurt the public's trust, man, that's a horrible thing. That's absolutely horrible. So the problem I see with this green movement is it's by the wrong people. Ye- It is definitely by the wrong people. It's and it's not a conversation that's being had in the open. It is a conversation that's being thrust upon the American populace as well as the Canadian populace. And then we're expected, to foot the bill for these projects that is essentially just making someone feel good about themselves. Well, I care about the environment. Whoop-de-doo. I care about families. Poor people are a lot more important than the animals. Poor people are a lot more important than than some stupid wolf or some or wolf integration or any nutty just ridiculous foolishness that you find so common in in politics now, especially left-leaning politics. You find just a bunch of nutty stupidness where it's like somehow everyone's supposed to pretend like this tree is more important than this family. And yet, at the same time, these same politicians are the ones that talk about Black Lives Matter. Well, Black Lives Matter, and that should show in um, how you treat the poor by giving them cheap energy. and you give the poor cheap energy. They can afford to heat their homes. They can afford to go out and spend more money on food. They can they can have now just a little bit of wiggle room where, let's say, you made the heating bill $30 cheaper every month. That's $30 now that I can spend on my family. That's $30 I can buy a new light bulb so my car, now I got both lights working and I don't have to worry about the police pulling you over, or all kinds of different small things like that, that if you've got money you don't really think about. But the poor, to them, it's everything, right? And so when we take care, really take care of the poor, not just say, oh, well, here's some money that the government will give you so long as you stay poor. That just is producing this really antagonistic welfare system where the poor people, it's not like the poor are thankful that you're donating, you're giving them this money. They're not thankful that they have to stay poor to be able to get this assistance, because a lot of the assistance is based off of how much you're earning. If you start making too much money, then you automatically lose all of those benefits. And so it becomes an entrapment, an absolutely horrible entrapment for anyone trying to get out of that poverty. And if you're willing to work hard and try to get out, then you're met with a lot of issues. So, trying to get back onto the subject of energy, energy is important because we want poor people to afford to live. As much as we care about the environment, people are more important. Children are more important than some polar bear. Let all the polar bears die if it saves poor children. Absolutely, 110%. And what our politicians, at least in America, aren't having is they're not having real discussions about, okay, what does what are we willing to put up with in terms of dirtiness? Like, what level of smog are we willing to accept if it means that families can afford cheap electricity? What level are we willing to put up with? And those conversations, am I getting lost? No, it's right over here. Those conversations are not being had. And instead, what's being had is, well, if you don't cut back on your carbon emissions, and if we don't cut back, then the world is going to end. And I don't think that's accurate, because you look at the models and you say, all right, well, prove it then. Prove to me that the world's going to end. And you hear a lot about the polar ice caps melting. But the main thing that people don't talk about with the increase in carbon is how much easier it's going to be for farmers. Because the more carbon you have in the air, the easier it is to grow plants with less water, which is really great for places like California that are having super bad troubles with their water retention, or places like I don't know, Africa. That's lots of different places within Africa that are struggling with their water, like, say, Egypt, and different Middle Eastern countries as well. The more carbon you have, the easier it is. And when you have wheat's the easiest grown crop. And if you've got the ability to grow wheat in your country, man, I just totally failed. That was not a FLG game. That was not a big league gamer moment at all. But the easier it is to grow food, the better your country is going to be. And it's amazing how people care more about some stupid animal than they do about people surviving. And that just absolutely blows my mind that people care more about that than, oh, am I going to die? Yep. Yeah, I died. I died. Shoot. And it just amazes me that people care more about animals and temperatures than they do about whether or not families can afford to heat their homes, whether or not nations have the infrastructure necessary to take care of their people. And it's just nuts. If you look at the price of heating in Germany, it has just gone through the roof. And that's because of stupid politicians making bad decisions, and they're so concerned with the environment that they forget I'm not elected to serve the environment. I'm elected to serve people. It should be people first. We're caretakers of our environments, absolutely. But we're people first. And we're for the people first, right? For the people, by the people, all that good stuff. But you're not seeing that in politics now. What you're seeing is this really strong ideology put on the common people, the poor people, where it's like, oh, you know, you know, we want to save the polar bear, and then and in doing so, we're damning the poor kids. And it's nuts because the same people who are so interested in saving um, the polar bear are the same ones that also are talk about Black Lives Matter, and they talk about the poor and helping the poor. But in reality, the best way to help the poor is to let the poor help themselves. The poor really don't need your help all that much. They just need politicians to get out of the way so that we can get to work. It's absolutely insane how so many people care about the poor, how many people claim to care about the poor, and yet they produce policies that are anti-helpful. That's a horrible word, but policies that are just detrimental to actually helping poor folks. And it's just infuriating because you can help the environment by helping poor people get money because oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this. Oh, no, no. Oh, you dirty, you stinking loser. So, back onto the subject now of energy. Much increase is by what? The strength of the ox. So, you need something strong if you want to have much increase. And you got to ask yourself, what level of increase are we willing to have to be able to increase? What level of work are we going to have to allow increase? And that conversation's not being had at all. As what the conversation is something like, well, there's too many people on the planet, so we need to reduce the people. Well, who's the ones that are going to be reducing? And that's in a whole nother argument. But that's that Malthusian idea that there's too many people on the planet and people are a scourge, basically. That's what it ends up being, is people are a scourge and there's too many people and we need to reduce the population. Well, it's like, who gets to be the one that says, there's too many? Like what? Are my kids too many, but yours aren't? What do you and that kind of thinking is what causes genocide and genocidal practice, and it's just a very, very dangerous road to go down. It's no road that any good politician should ever get any thought to, because it's incredibly dangerous for people, poor people especially, because it's amazing. Well, I don't want to go down that road too much, but it's anti-human. And anyone who thinks that we're not able to feed the people we have, you clearly have not driven through rural America. Because if you drive through rural America, you know what you find? You find just acres and acres and acres and acres of farmland that's not being utilized at all. Applied energistics. All right. So, back now to that Bible verse to get us back on track. Where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but much increase is by the strength of the ox. So, if you want increase, you're going to have to rely on something stronger than yourself. So, right now, one of the strongest forms of energy that we have that is completely being underutilized is nuclear power. Nuclear power. Nuclear power is not being utilized properly. And it's just absolutely infuriating because there's so much money getting poured into wind power and solar power, and yet here's this wonderful power, um, nuclear, and people just aren't using it properly. It's infuriating, absolutely infuriating. All right, let's get this. Need a gear shift for that. Oh, if I want to spend the time trying to generate a gear shift, so I think what I'll do is just put it there instead. I know this is ugly as all get out. I'll make it prettier. There we go. There we go. Now we got gold melting. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, I'm gonna clean this. Um, the storage system up is absolutely atrocious right now. But the conversation is not being had at, at all when it comes to, all right, what is the most efficient way to power our society? And we need power, and we need it cheap, and we need it as cheaply as possible so that we can make lots of money, and then we can take that money, we can save a certain amount of money that we make from this cheap power, cheap, quote unquote, dirty power, and then invest in some really powerful, clean stuff, like making fusion not just fiction. And so I think that's where nuclear power comes in, especially when you have those advanced. Had to get some water. Make those advanced, next generation thorium power plants that where their byproduct is uranium. So not only do you apply the thorium and have the reaction, but then you have the byproduct is then reusable so that you're using a lot more of the material than just the old style uranium reactors. And so it's nuts to me that the American populace, as well as other countries, haven't gone full blown in the of course, that's probably the wrong terminology. They haven't just gone full nuclear. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Nations have no problem making nuclear bombs, but they have a huge problem making nuclear power, which is just nuts to me. If you want increase, you're going to need to be willing to be dirty. But the good thing about nuclear is, unlike, say, like burning coal, you get to capture all of the waste. So it amazes me that people aren't on board with this, because you want to talk about green. If you can capture your waste, then how is that not green, right? That's as green as you can get. I mean, and nuclear waste is definitely green. It glows all kinds of green. And so that's just something that to me is astounding, that politicians who want to go green are not going for nuclear, because when you look right down at it, there's nothing green about building massive windmills. All the concrete, I mean, just to have concrete alone, it's going to take you 5 mines. Mines aren't green, folks. Melting and smelting metals is not green. It's only green in Minecraft. Anything else, you're producing a lot of toxins, you're producing all kinds of byproducts. And then you have to paint those structures, and if you want to paint them with a good paint that'll last, that's also going to take a lot of different materials that aren't green. You're going to have to use metals to power it and transport and store the power. None of that's green. You're going to kill a lot of birds. That's not green. The windmill isn't picky. It just doesn't kill the readily available birds. It'll kill the ones that are protected, by the way. And so, and furthermore, the wind doesn't pick up at 5 o'clock when you get home after work, or whenever you get home. The nuclear plant can. And so it's so insane to me that people are honestly thinking that you can, on a grand nationwide scale, apply wind and solar and hydro, and have that be the main source. It's just to me, it's lunacy. Maybe in the right areas, like maybe up in Colorado where you get a lot of sunshine, and there's not a huge amount of clouds, and yeah, go for solar. Or in Arizona, go for solar. But in somewhere where it's cloudy, you're not going to have solar anywhere near Portland, anywhere near Oregon or Washington. It's not going to work very well. Good luck trying to have a lot of windmills up there too. And so it's just, to me, it's just incredible that these politicians and country people, these countrymen, so quote unquote, aren't really getting into the whole nuclear power, because that's what's going to help feed people cheap energy so that then people can rise up from their poverty. And the cheaper you can make um, basic life necessities, the better it'll be for your poor. And the better the poor have it, the easier it is for them to get out of poverty. Because it's really hard to get out of poverty when there's so many different expensive things that are required for life. It just produces this stranglehold. And to really get out of poverty, you have to be able to have some savings each month, so that way, because most poor people, they have problems, and then they have pro- future problems. So like they have the immediate problems of, okay, well, I got this issue with the house. I need to fix the house. Um, well, house is a bad that's a bad that's a bad example because they don't live in houses. So we got a problem with the car. We need to fix the car. I won't be able to drive to work. That's going to cost $300. All right. So how are we going to save that $300? That's a good question. So if you can make if you can make the heating bill $100 cheaper per month, I know that's a big stretch. Let's say you're able to do it to that extreme of a level. Now I can save up and that car will be fixed in 3 months. And now there's some hope because I'm thinking, okay, well, the heating bill it got reduced. Um, the food bill got reduced. The gas bill got reduced. Um, they opened up construction for housing so that builders can build the actually needed amount of houses without having to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on permits, legal fees, and consultations. And so now the appropriate amount of houses can get built and apartments can get built so that now there's enough houses so that it's not monopolized with a few different landlords, and now there's more competition. The property price is lower. It's just not a battle between either Section 8 or more expensive middle class apartments. Now you have some somewhat good lower class apartments, and all of those things, when you combine them together, that's what's going to really help the poor people. Because I was poor, I worked at McDonald's when Obama was president, and he did absolutely nothing for us as a president because we were all people who wanted to work. We didn't want to, we didn't want to go on welfare because then we'd have to work a certain amount of hours. You couldn't work too many hours, or you get too much money and then you quit getting benefits, which is absolutely insane, by the way, that you can be so poor that you need government assistance, and then you start making money and get out of your poverty, and because now you're earning a lot of money, that now you don't get that government assistance, and you go right back to square one. It's just it's all it does is it traps people. And if you were to help people properly with welfare, then what you do is you say, listen, we're going to give you this help with housing, help with food for this a period of time. And over a course of time, that help is going to lessen. So you better get your butt to work. You better get working because it's only going to last so long. And if you want an extension, you're going to have to prove why you deserve that extension. And I think that would be a much better way of helping poor people than just saying, okay, here's a blanket amount of help for a blanket amount of time if you make a blanket amount of money. And anytime you make more money, you don't get help. So if you base your livelihood on that help, then you're perpetually stuck in a bad spot. And it's not a good system at all. It's not helping poor people. It's not helping the society lift poor people up, which is what it was originally intended to do. And it just produces problems. And one of the problems it produces is people being resentful of help, because people are tired of governments trying to quote unquote help them, and they just want the governments to step out of the way so that we can help ourselves. And poor people can't help themselves if the government just gets out of the way and lets them do the stuff that they need to do, like work. And so back to this increase, if you want much increase, you're going to have to figure out what level of filth you're willing to put up with. And you're going to have to put up with a certain level of filth if you want increase. And to think that oh, shoot. To think that you can have increase without, oh, geez, this might be a mess. To think that you can have increase without getting your hands dirty with work, it's just not reality. It's not how it works. There's no clean way to have increase. Increase requires making a mess, and then there's things you can do to minimize that mess after you've produced your product, which is called cleanup. But you can't have cleanup until the job has been finished. And the problem we're having in politics today is people aren't allowed to even talk about um, getting the dirty job done first. And that's just treated like it's just an anathema. It's a curse. It's like, well, how dare you even consider this dirty work? Well, this dirty work is what's going to help poor people feed their families. So, how about you not stick your nose up at these policies, and snub your nose at what you're calling, damaging for the environment. What's really damaging for the environment is people who are poor that are fed up with stupid governments, and they decide, well, I'm just going to live on welfare. I'm not going to contribute to the economy, and if the government takes away my welfare, I'm just going to rob and steal. That'll be, how about that? How about that's for the environment? Because that happens, folks. It happens all the time. People just get fed up with crap and they say, fine, screw you guys. I'm just going to go rob, steal, and I'm going to do what I want. Now, usually it's not put out like that, but that happens. People get fed up with the stupidity and they say, fine, screw this. If you ain't going to let me work my way out, I'll steal and rob my way out. And so that's the issue you got going on. Now, where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but much increases by the strength of the ox. And my argument is the strongest ox we have right now in terms of energy production is nuclear. Is it dirty? Oh, 110%, absolutely. But you need dirty sometimes because you need it to be able to be powerful enough to get the job done. And as nice as clean energy sounds, in reality, it's just a fairy tale. There's no such thing as clean energy. Energy requires work, getting your hands dirty, and that just requires that just requires you working. And so this whole idea that you can work and not get dirty is just wrong, and it's against what life is. That's not good at all. So I hope that long-winded rant made sense. I know it's a little difficult lecturing while also playing video games. Maybe I'll do things differently. See. God. So it came down, and it was good. Let's see. Let's see if we got a system. Oh, I need to turn that off. No, it was turned on. Okay. So I hope that made sense. The strongest ox you got I'm aware about anyways is natural gas, coal, and then the top would be nuclear. Obviously natural gas is better than coal. But yeah, it's just nutty to me that we live in a society where people think they think they're helping the poor, but in reality, they're just making them more poor. And they're not helping anything. They're not helping anybody by keeping the poor poor. And so I hope that was helpful for you. The greatest ox we have today, in my opinion, and in terms of energy, is nuclear power. And it's really sad how poorly utilized nuclear power is in the modern world. It's literally a gold mine because here you have this finite resource, coal, and you have a completely new resource out there, uranium and thorium, and yet people aren't jumping at that opportunity. I mean, that's a completely new resource of different mines, different different materials, and all that good stuff, and yet people are sticking with the outdated coal, which like when you have these policies like they have in Germany and in other parts of the world where you try to go green, so to speak, and fuel through going green, what you end up is incredibly expensive energy that is at best um, very thinking of the right word. Precocious is the word I want to say. I think that's the wrong word though. But at best, it's just this. It's no guarantee because you can't control the wind. The wind doesn't pick up when you need it to. And so I hope that was helpful for you. It might not be, but there you go. So, what do you think about all that? Why do you think that people aren't jumping on nuclear? I get that there's been problems with nuclear in the past, but you can really, modern nuclear plants don't explode. No nuclear plants explode, to be clear, but modern nuclear plants don't have the problems that Chernobyl had. And if you keep your nuclear plants in good order, you're not going to have those problems. So it's just astounding that there's even a debate going on about not having it when you could have all this really great cheap energy, and yet you don't because people are unwilling to, quote unquote, be dirty with this dirty power. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and bye bye.